It's easier for me to talk about these matters in English than in Italian. This is the official announcement of the Nobel Peace Prize. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 1995 in 2 equal parts to Joseph Rotblat and to the Pugwash Conferences on Science and World Affairs for their efforts to diminish the part played by nuclear arms in international politics and in the longer run to eliminate such arms. The rest is details then. And in fact, I will briefly focus on this topic, the elimination of nuclear weapons, the complete elimination of nuclear weapons, rather than talking about Pugwash. As you have seen in the movie, I was at the time the Secretary General of Pugwash, so I actually accepted the half of the prize given to Pugwash formally. But on the other hand, the speech, you know, at the Nobel Peace Prize there is a speech. You saw part of the speech by Rotblat, and then there was another speech on behalf of Pugwash, and I did not give that speech. We divided within Pugwash the various responsibilities. The speech was in fact given by John Holdren, who at the time was the chairman of the Pugwash Executive Committee. And I am mentioning this because now John Holdren is the Special Assistant for Science and Technology of President Obama. He sits in an office close to the White House with a staff of 95 people, and he is one of the main advisors of President Obama. And this is a sign of the very positive changes that have occurred. So, in fact, my message will be a positive one with respect to the prospect of total elimination of nuclear weapons, the transitions to a nuclear weapon-free world. As Telmo mentioned, in January of 2007, so sort of 12 years, 11 years after this Nobel Peace Prize, which was already an indication of the seriousness given to the goal of total elimination of nuclear weapons, in January 2007, there was an article published in the Wall Street Journal by 4 American statesmen. And these 4 statesmen were not at all pacifists, they were not idealists, they were in fact very much realists, I would even say realpolitik types. They were Schultz, Perry, Kissinger, and Sam Nunn. 2 of them had served as secretaries of state, one of them as Secretary of Defense, and one of them as, for a long time, as chairman of the Senate Armed Forces Committee in the United States. 2 were Republicans, 2 were Democrats, and their article was saying that one should take seriously the goal of total elimination of nuclear weapons. Of course, not in one day, not immediately, but that this was an important goal. And what was the real political reason why these people who had the tradition of being realists took this position? The real reason is that they realized, and they stated, that the future of humankind, or the future of world politics, will be one of 2 alternatives. One alternative is a world without nuclear weapons. The other alternative is a world in which nuclear weapons will spread to more and more states, possibly also to sub-state units, to terrorists. They will then be used, and this will be a catastrophic future, perhaps even a future in which Homo sapiens will disappear. And for this reason, they said, the time has come to begin to work for a nuclear weapon-free world. And this stand had an enormous impact. First of all, in the United States, there were meetings, there were second papers and so on, but there was a very large positive response. The majority of the previous Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, or Special Assistant to the President of the United States, the living ones, so the people who are, in some sense are the most important statement on this issue, took a stand in favor of this paper, of this development. And there were then analogous stands taken all over the world, in many, many countries. In fact, the first country where there was an analogous response was in Great Britain. Very often these stands were, in a sense, mimicking the initial one, so it was a quartet of eminent politicians, generally bipartisan. So in Great Britain it was Labour and Conservatives and also Liberals. The next country, in fact, where there was an analogous stand was Italy. In 2008, in July of 2008, 4 quite eminent Italian politicians took a stand. There was an article in July in Il Corriere della Sera, and it was signed by D'Alema, former foreign minister and prime minister, Parisi, former Minister of Defense, Giancarlo Fini, former Foreign Affairs Minister and at that time and even now President of the Parliament, of the House, and Giorgio La Malfa, former Minister of the Budget, Minister for Europe. At that time, it was a bipartisan stand, 2 from the center-left, 2 from the center-right, supporting the government. Now, as it happens, in Italy, things have changed somewhat, and so, to some extent, these 2 who were more supporting the Berlusconi government have become less of the supporters of the Berlusconi government, Fini and La Malfa. But nevertheless, this was an important stand. I also signed this intervention. And then there were many analogous ones in many other European countries. I will not only European around the world, in Japan. Not too long ago, there has been an analogous one from Russia, signed by very eminent politicians in Russia as well. But the most important development, again mentioned by Telmo, is the fact that the President of the United States himself has taken a very strong stand in this direction. He had mentioned this as a goal in his election campaign. And then he gave a speech in April of last year, in April 2009, and the Prague speech by President Obama. And, well, I will not read all of this because it's very late, but let me just, the next one is the more significant statement. It says, "So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons. I'm not naive. This goal will not be reached quickly, perhaps not in my lifetime. It will take patience and persistence. But now we, too, must ignore the voices who tell us that the world cannot change. We have to insist, yes, we can." And if you remember, "Yes, we can" was the motto of Obama during the campaign, because during that campaign, at the beginning, it looked inconceivable that a person like Obama could become President of the United States, but he did. And let me end by saying one more thing. When people mention, of course, there is opposition. There are people who are unconvinced. The movement will be slow. The movement in NATO will be slow. But sometimes when people mention this talk, they emphasize that Obama said, not in my lifetime. They forget to say that he said, perhaps not in my lifetime. And let me end instead by saying that even though I am much older, my life expectancy is much shorter than that of Obama, I don't think that it is not in my lifetime that this goal will be achieved. And why I say so? I say so because I claim that to a large extent we already live in a world without nuclear weapons. And what do I mean by this? Well, you know, nuclear weapons have been used with terrific results 65 years ago in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But they have never more been used in, as one says in anger, in war. Not even when countries that possessed enormous nuclear arsenals were defeated in war. The United States in Vietnam, Russia in Afghanistan. Nevertheless, they did not use nuclear weapons. So, over time, the idea that nuclear weapons could be used has become more and more and more inconceivable and impossible. And nuclear weapons don't play much of a role in international politics. Countries that have nuclear weapons are not particularly more influential than countries that do not have nuclear weapons. And this situation has permitted the vast majority of countries of the world to renounce voluntarily the possession of nuclear weapons. So, in this sense, we already are in a world in which nuclear weapons are really not so important. Of course, the danger is there, and the arsenals, although they have been very greatly reduced, still are enormous, and if ever they should be used, it would be an immense catastrophe. But they have not been used for such a long time that there is de facto a norm that, not a legal norm, but well, there are also legal stands, but more realistically, in politics, no politician anymore thinks of possibly having recourse to nuclear weapons. And so I am confident that eventually we will move to the actual complete elimination of nuclear weapons, with many other things that will go with it. The end of the Cold War, of course, was a crucial step in this direction, and after that there is really no reason why nuclear weapons should be maintained, and I hope we'll go, so to say, as one physicist would say, monotonically, uniformly, towards a world without nuclear weapons soon. Thank you.